All right, guys, welcome to another special episode of Candace. Here's my theory. I believe that the elites are aiming for clinical retardation. I'm not kidding. I believe that if somebody produced a study right now and said, don't drink water, 50% of people in the world would perish. They would die because they would suddenly just stop drinking water because the data says don't drink water. And obviously, I've showed you guys many times in my podcast, my favorite clip on the internet this year because it explains exactly my philosophy in life. It's the reason why we designed the second edition of the Candace Cups to say, don't care, built different. It's very important for you guys to take a listen to Andrew Tate explaining what we can garner from the data, as he says. Take a listen.
I'm glad I'm super rich. You know, now that I'm super rich, I get to be one of those crazy rich guys who acts unusual. And they're like, oh, he's a bit eccentric, but he's rich, so he gets away with it. Like wearing a microphone on his chest. Everyone else puts a suit on, hides the microphone. I'm like, get a microphone, bruv. Don't care. Built different. Don't care. One of my habits now is ignoring all data. It's great. I love when people come to me and say, actually, we've got the data to prove what, you little What are you going to prove to me? I can prove to you that the ice caps are melting. There's ice in my water right now. I'm going to leave the water unattended until the ice melts. Will the water overflow out of the cup? No. Why are all the richest, most important people in the world who are pushing this scam buying beachfront homes? Oh, but the data says. The data's from the Matrix, and you are the Matrix, and the Matrix is full of lies. Anyone who actually analyzes data nowadays proves they're a dumbass. Have you seen that graph thing, that meme, where you have the most stupid people and the most intelligent people do the same thing? Then you have the midwit in the middle. Data is for midwits, you know? Well, the data says, yeah, the data says. Well, actually, I guess statistically, the pharmaceutical company who sells the jab made the data. Why are you even reading it? Why are you reading it? There were stupid people who sat there and said, the jab's made of 5G cellular data. And then there was extremely intelligent people like me who said, I don't trust these motherfuckers. And we both didn't get the jab. All the people in the middle were like, well, the data says, and the news said. They wouldn't just make us all take a jab for no reason. Jabby jab, jabby jab. If you even look at data nowadays, you're a dumbass. You should just know. Street smart people don't need data. We've just been around. You know? I've just been around. I just know things because I've just been around on the street. If somebody's trying to give you something for free so desperately, it's probably a trap. When you're street smart like me, you're on the corner. You, your boys, some bitches. Guy comes up to you, goes, you want a hamburger? Not really. Hamburgers are good for you. If you don't eat, you'll die. Yeah. You should really have this hamburger. I don't want it. If you don't have this hamburger, you're going to lose your job. I'm going to lock you in your house. I don't trust him or his hamburger. Why were you people like, well, do you have a study about this hamburger? Do you have some data on the hamburger? Oh, it says that protein's good for you. Give it to me. Dumbass. The guy who got the hamburger is trying to force it down your neck, pull the study out of his.
It's perfect. We're going to jump right into a conversation with, I've watched it too many times.
Well, it's kind of funny because you probably have this also. You have a point of view and people say to you, where do you get this point of view? Why can you think that? What source does it come from? I've been around. How can you think anything else? You know, and I'm not one to get in trouble, but I recently watched your show when you were talking about Macron, wife, husband, whichever one it was. The dude. And people were saying to me, Andrew, what do you think about that? And I said, well, yeah, 100% his wife is a man. And they said, why? It's like, because he looks like a little and you can see it. So what more do you want to see? You can see on his face. You can see on Macron's face that he's exactly the kind of person who would be groomed by a man. Mm-hmm. So it's obvious.
And then it's the common sense aspect where they're like, first and foremost, they are producing no evidence to the contrary. 30 years, not a single picture of this person exists.
Yep.
We have plenty of pictures of his brother who suddenly went missing at the exact same time that Brigitte was born at the age of 30.
Yep.
And people don't have that common sense to go, wait, that is quite strange. Why are they not able to just easily debunk this? And instead, you're going to call everyone else crazy. And the thing that should terrify people is the fact, which you describe it as the matrix, I think that actually is the right term, is that the matrix works overtime to make it seem as though the people who recognize the insanity, recognize the homosexuality, recognize the pedophilia are in fact the people that are crazy. Like it's a complete inversion of what's actually happening.
And the saddest thing is that it works. I mean, where did Macron even come from anyway? I remember that French election. I'm certainly no expert on French politics, but I remember he popped up out of nowhere, some globalist. He was a lawyer or a banker or something. They just put him up there and then he won. The last French election, Marine Le Pen was winning and then, she lost. It's like, are these elections even real anymore? Is anything even real anymore? I mean, I only have criminal cases in 3 countries currently. You may as well add France to the list, But I just don't believe any of it. And then Macron stands up there, and of course, he's complete globalist, WEF. I remember his obsession with Merkel. Do you remember the way he used to stare at her?
Mm-hmm.
He used to stare at Merkel with adoring eyes. Very strange situation the French find themselves in. And when you point these things out, you point out that it's strange, right? You point out and say, look, this is unusual. Even if she is a woman, which is highly debatable. The fact that she's 30 years older and it's all just a bit weird. But if you want to mention these things, you're right. You're called a crazy conspiracy theorist because so many people are so desperate to conform. I came to this unfortunate realization recently, especially in light of the Kamala garbage. There's a whole bunch of people who want to be slaves. They literally want to be. You sit and say, why can't you convince people to see the truth? And then you realize it's because they don't want to see the truth. They want to be a slave because it makes them feel the same way a child feels when they get attention from their parents. They want to be good slaves to the system, and they hope that will prevent them from getting shot. Now, we know our history. It means they'll get shot last, but they'll still get shot.
Right.
So you have to make a decision as a man, especially, like, do I want to die first like a hero for telling the truth, or do I want to die a few years later like a coward? And I guess that's where you see the differentiation in the opinions, the dichotomy of the different types of men who are living in the world today. But it's really crazy that so many people will sit there and consistently consume lies and garbage after they've been lied to so many times, and they feel like they get some kind of, I don't know if it's satisfaction, I don't know if it's warmth, I don't know what they feel in their heart when they just subjugate themselves to these people. Maybe it's like cuckdom, they like to feel like a cuck. They like to feel stupid. There's no other way. There's a whole bunch of people who want to be enslaved to these systems.
I think slavery is natural, actually. I thought about this for a long time because I'm going, how could you accept this? Like somebody telling you to stay at home, not see your family, double mask, let your parents die alone. Yep. Everything spiritually should be coming online going, this is not natural, this is wrong, and I'm going to fight this. But they get in line. And even when they know it's wrong, they're still fearful to speak out and say that for fear of persecution. And something that a study that I showed, like a study that was done by the CIA, an experiment rather, to my audience was where they sat a bunch of people in a room. This is a true CIA experiment. And 17 of them were agents and one of them was from the public, but he didn't know that he was the only person that wasn't an agent. Yep. And they held up a picture of a triangle and they went around the room and they said, what do you see? And every agent, went through them first and they said square, 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 square. It was clearly a triangle, square, 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 square. They get to that last guy and he says, square. Knowing fully that he is seeing a triangle. Yep. So what they understand is that peer pressure, like the psychology of peer pressure is a real thing, but it's stunning to me that grown men succumb to this or something that's unbelievably wrong about that.
Yeah, completely. And that's why they attack masculinity so heavily, because truthfully, as a man, if you have an opinion which is different to other men, it crosses your mind, you might have to fight. That's just how it goes, right? So if you're a man and you sit in that room and 17 men say it's a square and you know it's a triangle, you're probably looking them up and down going, can I beat them all? Now me, I'm built different. I'll be like, that is a triangle, sir. You're wrong. You're wrong. But you have to have a lot of faith in yourself to be able to do that, right? A lot of people simply don't speak out because it's a scary thing to do because now you have personal accountability and then you have to defend your opinions also. And there's a lot of people who aren't capable of or are afraid to defend their opinions. So they just think, I'll just go with the flow. And that's the actual mess we're in. I don't think the mess is so much conservatives against liberals or the sane against the insane. It's this ether in between of people who are just like, it doesn't matter. And I'm not interested in politics. And they're just going along with the system. which is probably the largest contingent of the populace. And they're just allowing this clown show to continue for as long as it's continued. And I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but ever since 2020, I don't believe any of the elections are fair at all. I don't believe that any of the people in charge have our interests at heart at all. I believe it's a massive racket where everyone is just stealing. I believe if you speak against the system, the Matrix is going to come and they're going to use lawfare to try and destroy you. I said on a podcast I did 7 days before Trump's assassination attempt that there's no way they're going to let him win. Then his assassination attempt happened. Thank God he survived it. That was a miracle in and of itself. That's been memory hold now. That's been disappeared from the internet. Don't know if you saw this morning. All of the references between Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein have been removed from Bill Clinton's Wikipedia page a couple of days ago. So that's gone. Nothing's printed anymore, right? So they just changed the typing. And you try and talk about this with people. There's people who understand you. There's people who disagree with you who are mentally unwell. But unfortunately, there's this huge contingent in the middle who are just like, yeah, I don't really know. And I don't know. And I'm just going to go do as they say. It'll be fine. And they're so perma-distracted with garbage. And I look at like a festival, for example. I'm not anti-music, but I look at a festival and I see people in the festival and they're all screaming and jumping up and down. I'm like, if you had half as much passion for the freedom of your children that you do for this song you've heard 10,000 times, we'd be in a much different position. But they've managed to placate the entire population, and which is actually a really interesting thing. You have to sit and think, how did they make us all so placid? How has everybody just been eunuched to the point where they're sitting there going, oh, well, I can't see my parents. I can't leave my house, but it's fine. It's truly incredible. It's actually quite a remarkable thing they've managed to do. And as they turn on the PR machine once again, they've turned on the machine for Kamala. Nobody liked her. Nobody. Not even the liberals liked her. Not even the biggest Joe Biden fans liked her. They were all saying she's no way she could win. And here she is, the most loved person on the planet, like 2 weeks later. It's just incredible to me. They could do COVID all over again, Candace. They could do it again.
I know.
Isn't that scary?
Yeah, it's very scary. And that's why I go back to this like peer pressure thing. I basically now, when I meet people, I want to know who they were in high school. I think it's the most significant time in your life. I want to know who you were in high school, because it's somehow you see that their characteristics, they just reemerge later on in life. And right now what we're fighting is a system of losers, right?
Yep.
Who are writing their articles feverishly. They hate people that have confidence. They hate people that are self-confident and are not going to, oh, I said that the data says this and I'm smart and I went to Columbia. I don't care if you went to, I literally don't care. You are the dumbest person. I would never follow you, right? You couldn't lead a marching band, right? And somehow you think that writing articles in the Daily Mail, calling me names, case in point, New York Times former writer Barry Weiss. Candace, it's that insane. You are you're like a weird loser, lesbian, can crawl in a hole, literally Barry Weiss would crawl in a hole and die. I could care less. And I say that knowing that there's going to be, how could you say, literally she could crawl in a hole and die. You think you have the authority, right, to tell people that I'm bat insane because I won't get in the line in the same way that you've gotten in line with the system your entire life. Yep. Like you're a Zionist, bought and paid for Zionist, and your job is to convince Americans that never-ending war, while we can't afford groceries, while people can't afford to put gas into their tank, is something that they should just subject themselves to because there's some higher moral purpose that really just serves you and your superiors.
Whoa, you don't think Israel's your number one ally?
It's the dumbest thing. People just say stuff, and that's how you really know that everyone's a bot. And I say this even against, people who I've had respect for in the past. I really see it because they say stuff that doesn't even make sense. It's like 6 feet social distancing, save lives. Israel's our number one ally and friend. Why would you even make that statement? That's an objectively, on its face, stupid statement to make.
They just repeat it. And you're right. They don't think about it. So let's think about it for everyone at home. Let's think about it. Someone comes up to me, Andrew Tate, Israel is your number one ally. I said, well, they never paid my rent. So they're not my ally. They don't cut my grass. Now, what do they do for me? It turns out nothing. So who are they allies to? Well, are they allies to the government who are also, it seems to be my enemy? Are they allies to the people who I don't trust? When those senators who are robbing everybody and stealing all of the money and inflating the currency stand up and say they're our number one ally, maybe they're your number one ally because you can get an Israeli passport and disappear and hide because you're a pedophile. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're your ally, but they're certainly not mine. So why is anybody even repeating this trope? Whose ally are they?
Right. I said that. They protect pedophiles. They literally...
They're allied to the criminal class.
So I'm like, where is this coming from? They also performed a terrorist attack. and got away with it because of, I'm
They've gone away with
assuming
a
the
few.
blackmail they have on politicians, but the USS Liberty, we can't even talk about that in America.
Yep.
It's like this no-go zone. You can't talk about that, or the press is going to label you an anti-Semite for knowing that they murdered and tried to get away with it by flying in planes, unmarked planes, and bombing the USS Liberty to drag us into their war with Egypt.
Yep.
That's not my ally. Not from a political standpoint, not from a personal standpoint. The second your state is protecting pedophiles and allowing them to escape from America after they've molested children, and then you go, oh, we'll keep them safe here. And on top of that, you get to take our tax dollars. We can't even extradite our pedophiles. And you why are you saying that?
And isn't an ally reciprocal? Like, shouldn't it go both ways? Like, what do they do for us? I understand we fight their wars for them and we protect them and we give them weapons and we do everything they want. That's fine. They're surrounded by enemies. For some reason, nobody seems to like them. That's fine. What do they do for us? Ever. Anything, ever. It's really...
No one can tell you.
No one can tell you. And then, of course, people are so emotionally invested in the idea of Israel. When you mention these things, they just repeat that trope. Well, they're our number one ally. It's like, I think you need to first understand the word "are," who "are" is, and secondly, understand the word ally, because ally is supposed to go both ways. And this is just one of the many different pegs in the system, which now X is free. I have to admit, I feel like people are starting to realize and wake up a little bit about a lot of subjects. And Rumble is out there, and obviously you've got your own show, which is amazing. But it's one of the cogs in the machine that I hope slowly start to break. And I was actually very optimistic until about 2 weeks ago when this Kamala crap started. And I realized that we're really not as far along as I thought. There's still so many people who will just march step into oblivion. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I would hate to be labeled a misogynist. That would be terrible.
You've never been called that before.
I don't know if I'd ever survive.
No.
But my view on the world is pretty simple. My view on the world is that you can't have loyalty from somebody who's weak. Because weak people, even if they have the best intentions to be loyal to you, they can always be intimidated, or they can always be primarily intimidated. But when it's down to save their own skin because they're weak and they're afraid, they're the kind of person who will turn on you. I don't trust weak people. I don't have weak people around me. I don't like weak people. And the fact that Kamala can't even string a sentence together means that when she gets to calls from the shadow figures about how the world's really going to work, I just can't see her standing up for the average American. I can't see her saying to whoever calls that phone, who's really in charge of things, who've been running things for the last 4 years because Biden doesn't have a clue what's going on, and they say this needs to happen. I just don't see her saying, that's bad for the American people. I just see her saying, oh, well, what did Trump say? The bus, that's what buses do. That's it. So it doesn't even matter what she says. It doesn't even matter how well-intentioned she is, which is, again, arguable because I don't believe she is. But because she's such a weak person, she's just going to be stood up there as a puppet, and she's going to be played. And it's scary because I truly believe if Trump loses this election, it's over for America. It's over for the Western Hemisphere. It's done.
All right, guys. Interrupting this conversation very briefly because I have some exciting news. You know that I love Good Ranchers. They've been a great sponsor of this show. They are supporters of freedom of speech. And guess what? I've teamed up with Good Ranchers to create my own box. You can now go to goodranchers.com and you can get the Candace Owens box. I worked with them to curate all of my family's favorite meats. We've got New York strip that you'll get in the box. You're going to get pork chops in the box. I am telling you, I am very excited because now you get to order the Candace Owens box. Here's how you're going to do it. I've written this down. You're going to go to goodranchers.com/Candace and you're going to buy the box today. You can try it once or subscribe and save $25 on every box. Plus, subscribers will get their pick of free protein for a year. So every box comes with more delicious meat. You guys know it's American made. It also supports farmers. It supports ranchers. It's just a great American company. You already have to eat dinner, so why not do it with me at Good Ranchers? Again, you're going to go to goodranchers.com/Candace and purchase the Candace Owens box, New York strips, pork chops, and my favorite on the grill, Wagyu burgers. Go to goodranchers.com/Candace today. I actually want to ask you a question about two people, because right now what's happening in America is the MAGA party is actually infighting. The Groypers have declared war on the MAGA party, but on top of the Groypers, people have spoken out, myself included, to say that obviously you survived an assassination attempt, you're going to come out of it different, you know? And so I wanted to give Trump that runway and expect that, like, you got to be feeling a little bit differently. But it doesn't feel to me like the same Trump from 2015. And obviously he's the better candidate. I want Trump to win as well. But it does seem that now that he's accepted money, that he can't be as hardcore about certain topics and certain issues as he was back in 2015 when there was no chance he was going to win. You know, allegedly no chance he was going to win. And also nobody would give him money and no one would give him any airtime. And now it feels like, I don't know, like they've kind of, I don't want to say like buck broken him, but there's definitely a lot of consultants around money kind of always being the root of lies and evil, and I believe lies by omission, not saying things that you would say because, oh, well, this person just cut you a $50 million check.
Yeah.
So I maybe stay away from that subject because that person is, from Romania and these are the Romanian interests. So,
Yeah. Good country choice there.
Yeah, it's
I
a
like
great
that.
country choice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
smart. I'm a fan of Trump. Obviously, I hope he wins. My view on it, if I had to guess, and of course, I have no data to back this up. I've just been around. Trump ran with a scorched earth policy and he got into power and they tried the whole Russiagate garbage. And I think Trump actually, in many ways, was very soft in his first administration. And he believed to a degree he could reason with these savages. And he thought that, I should put Hillary in jail. I should do these things, but they'll take Trump Tower off me and they'll hit me with endless lawfare and it's going to be a mess. And I built this whole conglomerate of real estate and money, and I'm still American and my kids live here. And if you really declare war with the deep state on that level, my children are going to end up in trouble. And there's a whole bunch to consider. So he tried to be nice to them. And then he realized that doesn't work because they rigged the election. When he left, they rigged the election. They keep hitting him with lawfare to try and stop him being president again. And I think there was part of his mind that said, you know what? I'm really going to get back into administration and teach these guys a lesson. And then I think something happened. Someone came along at some point, and I think perhaps that deal was done. And they said, look, you won't go to jail. Trump Tower will stay standing. Your kids will be safe in America. Everything's going to be okay. But you're going to have to bend on these few things. And I think that perhaps, fatigue makes power. Napoleon said it. Fatigue makes cowards of us all. And he's certainly no coward. But it's amazing how daily war can grind you down. I can talk from personal experience. After 3 years of every single day you're fighting, and that's what they do. They know that you're too powerful a person to take out with one hit, so it's like hyenas on a lion, and they just bite. If I had to guess, I'm still praying for a Trump victory. I still think he's gonna be the best president. I still think he's gonna do his very best. I just feel like somewhere along the line, something has been agreed to prevent post-presidency or post-death for his empire and for his children. There seems to be some kind of deal somewhere. Again, I have no data on this. I've just been around. I feel like, and you look at the streets, let's talk about the streets, right? And the gangs, and they're out and they're all killing each other. And then eventually you see one gang member walk past another gang member and they don't kill each other. And you're like, something's been talked about now. It was different before. And it just kind of feels that way to me. I don't know exactly what the deal is. I'm not even going to say that I blame the guy for taking it, but some kind of agreement's been made, I feel like.
I feel the same, and I'm wondering if you do as well. Elon Musk seems a little bit different too. And I will admit, I was kind of all in on Elon Musk. Like, I really thought, and I still give him tons of credit, but he has fought a war that few people will ever understand really what he went through to really rescue speech at a moment where it was going to be the darkening. It was over. If they had gotten Twitter, it would have been done. And we saw what was happening, obviously, with all the COVID stuff, taking videos down of people talking about their own experiences with the shot. And then Elon Musk rescued Twitter and he went to war with that. You remember him on stage screaming at Bob, I think it was Bob Iger of Disney, and saying, you're not going to blackmail me and do all of these things. And now it seems, and I don't want to say that he's been blackmailed at all, but I just feel like it's a different Elon. And it could be what you're speaking about. Day in and day out, there is going to be some sort of a fatigue that manifests of having to fight people with a tremendous amount of power who do not let up one single day.
Oh, they never let up. And you have to choose your enemies, right? And sometimes you have to do a deal with people who you perhaps don't even always want to do a deal with to survive. It's difficult at the very, very top. We're talking about the highest possible echelons of power. And there's a lot of different interests coming your way. And you have to sit there and go, can I really war all of them? Or can I just ally with this one team? Which is unfortunate because people who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. It seems to be the same team every time. If I can just ally with this one team, I'm good against everything else.
Right.
And then people are sitting in a position and they're like, yeah, I guess, I want to live and I want my children to live. And because it comes down to that. I don't think many people realize how violent the world is. We live in a world now where we have all of these facades on top of violence. But really, the world is just guns and bullets and violence. That's the reality of the world. When we talk about something like a court case, what is a court case? Well, a court case is a piece of paper. But if there was no threat of violence behind it, I wouldn't go, or no one would go, right? You get a speeding ticket. You don't pay the ticket. They add more money. You don't pay it. They say go to court. You don't go. They send another summons. You don't go. They send an officer. He says come to court. You say no. Violence. It's all just garbage on top of violence. And at the highest echelons of power, what they normally do is they skip all the garbage first. They'll sit down and say, look, you can do whatever and you can be Mr. Smartass, but it doesn't matter how much money you have or how powerful you believe you are. Bullets kill people and you have children and they're going to die. And I've been around. Now, let's talk about this professionally. If I know drug gangs who do that over control of a street corner, you're telling me they're not going to do that for control of the largest economies on the planet? You're telling me there's not going to be a single conversation about the fact that your children are walking the street for the largest economies on the planet? It's a very scary world these men live in. And I feel like they've had to do a deal with certain interests to survive, unfortunately. And it kind of feels that way and it's scary. And then you end up looking at your own position and you're like, okay, well, I do run my mouth a lot. But having a political view and having actual power are different things. These people have actual power to press buttons. And those are the ones they have to keep their finger on. So it's I don't want to say anything bad about Elon. I really agree with you. He truly saved the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a hypocrisy in so many people's views. You know, I talk to people and they're anti, let's say the UK right now, where they're locking down everybody for telling the truth about the immigration. And they understand that the native people of the UK want to keep their country British and they want to protect it. And they completely understand that. But then they're against Gaza. And I'm like, to me, you either believe in people's ancestral right to their homeland and to defend it, or you don't. But people seem to always have this hypocrisy on certain issues. It's very interesting.
Well, that's psychology too. And I spoke of that on my show. And obviously I've earned the full ire of the mainstream media. And I don't care, because for me, and that offer was there. I mean, it was very clear to me that this is the one issue. If you don't talk about, well, you can maintain a comfortable life for you and your kids. But I just didn't like how many times I kept finding in the history of Israel and in the president of Israel defense for pedophiles. It just didn't work for me. Like, you know, that Zionists were so hardcore about Israel, were defending pedophilia. And I pressed an accidental button when I started speaking about Sigmund Freud. The Freud family is what created propaganda. You know, Edward Bernays, the Freud family is what created PR, the biggest PR firms in the world. And they just keep coming up with pedophilia scandals. Clement Freud, pedophile. Sigmund Freud, pedophile. His father, a pedophile. Defending his friend, William Fleece, a pedophile. And when you can then trace that, and it's funny you talk about the streets, these were people that were weapons dealers and drug dealers that then started Hollywood, right? They started Hollywood. Charlie Chaplin, a pedophile, who was under one of their thumbs. And you start realizing when you speak to people in Hollywood and they start speaking about the fact that there's so much pedophilia that's always taken place throughout Hollywood from the 20s, which you could say was the golden age that really Hollywood got established, all the way through to now. The ADL got started defending a pedophile. So to me, if this state is going to be on the side of pedophilia, and for whatever reason people keep turning the other cheek, that everyone who supports this state like seems to be okay with the pedophile origins, the ADL is now involved in our government. We know that a lot of these people in our government are being blackmailed. I wonder why. I personally, want to hear my conspiracy theorist, I think pornography websites are basically, they're able to figure out what your demented interests are. So these people, they're making you more and more perverse, more and more perverse. Suddenly you're watching some weird stuff, and then they got you watching some 12-year-old girl, whatever it is. Boom, you're under their control. And I think this is what Jeffrey Epstein, all of this stuff is about, getting men who would be in positions of power to acquiesce to some like pedophilic pornography, and then they're under their control. I really believe that.
I think you're right. And there's two things I'm going to say. First, I'm going to say they've checked my hard drives. And I love to say that to everybody who says, Andrew, you're a human trafficker. They've literally checked my hard drives. For the last 4 years, my hard drives have been checked. Check the hard drives of 99% of people in the mainstream. Go check their hard drives. Here we are, 4 years into this human trafficking garbage. No one's even seen a video or a picture of a single woman claiming to be human trafficked. Right? It's completely insane. Secondly, you're right. There's also a psychological component, which I think ties into the masculine, because men are built in a way where we like to show dominance, and you show dominance in many different ways. But one of the ways you do it is by having access to things other people can't have access to. So I feel like if you get these losers and then you put them in a position of power for the first time in their life, and then you tell them that nobody's allowed to be a pedophile, but you are, that actually makes it more tempting than it was before. Not because of the pedophilic interest. It's because they're allowed to do something others can't do. And that's a power ego trip, which once again makes it more appealing. It's kind of interesting how the male mind will work. But I know if you take an idiot and you give him some power and say, you can do this, but no one else can, he's going to be tempted by that thing no matter what it is. I mean, that's why men do a lot of things. That's the reason we buy fancy cars. Is it really the car, or is it because other people can't get it? That's the whole point. It's the peacocking. It's like, look what I can do. And amongst their perverse social circles, I guess it's a badge of honor to a degree. Mm-hmm. And then we're also going to talk about the fact that a lot of these men are not particularly attractive and haven't been attractive their whole lives. Like, I have another theory, and once again, I have no data at all to back this up, but I find it very interesting that it's Western politicians which are primarily caught up with these things, primarily. Like you see a Russian billionaire, a Russian oligarch, whatever, and he has a wife, and then he gets caught cheating with his girlfriend. He has some girlfriend somewhere. Cool. And then we'll be like, that's terrible. Yeah, cool, it's terrible, fine. But then what do the Western politicians do? They walk around with Michelle. They walk around with their wife, and then they get caught on islands. So, is that any better?
Well,
is that worse?
Western politicians gay? That's another thing, and that is what kind of leads me to believe that a lot of these people are being blackmailed and they're being selected for these positions. I mean, Emmanuel Macron is a homosexual. There's no question about that. Zelensky is a homosexual. Yep. You've got, I was going to say, I almost said Fidel Castro. Trudeau, Fidel's son. You got Trudeau. He's a homosexual. Yep. Barack Obama was a homosexual. Yep. And then finally, when we get in the West, a president who's definitely not a homosexual, Donald Trump, they just freak out. They completely lose their minds. This guy cannot be president. He's not allowed to be president because there's no aspect of the most extreme form of blackmail, which is if we know that you have engaged in pedophilia, that you've been involved in any of these weird sexual scenarios, we can control you in office. Yeah. And there's obviously the deep state thing is not a conspiracy theory. It's part of the reason why they didn't want Tucker to conduct that interview with Putin, because the first thing Putin said is I don't deal with your president. I'm dealing with the CIA. Yeah. Right. That is the deep state. He's like, he couldn't even
president. I don't talk to him.
The CIA is who's controlling your nations, which means that our democracy, the republic, it's an illusion.
Yep. Oh, 100% true. And when I say things, I don't, obviously exceptions disprove the rule. I talk in general, but in general, it is the masculine which protects the society in general. And in general, feminine are more accepting of certain things, and gays are closer to the feminine. So we say that we have men in charge. None of these people you named are men. None of them are masculine. There's nothing masculine about them. The true masculine essence is being prepared to die on a hill. And the number one thing we died for since the dawn of human time was our land and our women and our children. That's what we died for. And the reason we were prepared to die for them is because we know we could never be assimilated into another tribe. If there was another tribe on the other side of the hill, even if they outnumbered us 10-1, we knew that if they managed to get into the village, we were dead. The women can assimilate into their tribe because the women can join their tribe and have children. The women will be taken. We die. So we're prepared to fight. So the masculine essence, truthfully, is to be able to stand up against an army you know you can't beat and fight to the bitter end. And that's why they don't want anyone masculine in power, because then they can't be influenced. We just talked about those shadow figures making the phone calls. We don't want anyone who sends there like Trump and says, no, I don't care. That's not how this is going to go. So they like weakness. So even the idea of having a man in charge, all these people we just named aren't men. They're homosexual, which brings them pretty much close to girls. And when I say girls, not in a negative, insulting way, I'm trying to explain the feminine mindset of we can assimilate with the enemy more than we must fight and die on this hill with the enemy. And that's why they're doing it all. And you're right. It's certainly a coincidence. And it's also an extremely interesting coincidence that, global homo LGBT, that is the culture of the West now. It's the number one thing you can't insult. You can't go against. You can't degrade. You can burn an American flag before you can burn a pride flag. You'll catch a prison term for that. It's truly the new God. You can insult Jesus all day long, but you can't insult LGBT in a Christian country. And if you look at any of the American embassies in all of their vassal states, the first thing they do is try and push this LGBT insanity. They try and push this global homo everywhere they can to erode the masculine spirit. We talk about how the family's under attack, and it certainly is. There's a lot of ways it's under attack. LGBT is one of them. It's one of the things they use. But, there's a million different ways they've destroyed the nucleus of the cell. I was having this conversation the other day. I was talking to somebody, and we were saying, well, we're talking about men dying on hills, like I just said. It was after my Jesus protest, after I protested, because I was supposed to go to jail for that, because I didn't have a license. I didn't have a permit to protest. I'm on judicial control. I'm supposed to get 6 months mandatory. So I said bye to everyone, said to Tristan, ready for jail, packed a bag, went there to go to jail. So put me in jail for respecting Jesus. Put me in jail. I dare you. And even they knew better than that. So they were just like, please go home. So they didn't put me in jail. But I was ready to do it. And I was talking about dying on a hill. And I was talking to a girl, and she's like, yeah, but men aren't men anymore. And I said, but this is the thing that's so interesting if you actually analyze how they've destroyed society, because you're right, men aren't men anymore. But if you want to talk about dying on hills, you don't just need rich men or famous men. You actually need the common man. You need every man. And most men in my position, especially financially, are not interested in getting in any kind of trouble. right? We're interested in protecting our profits more than we are protecting a particular street or particular society or a particular ideal. Most of the people at my level of wealth just sell out and just bounce. So I'm like, you need the common man to be prepared to die on a hill. And that's why certain agendas, like when you talk about this LGBT stuff, or when they talk about, or they show that if you marry a woman and that woman betrays you and she wants the son's penis chopped off, then she's going to win. Or feminism, or all these different things. I tried to explain to her that if a man doesn't feel like he's the king of his own household, why would he feel like he has any duty to protect anything? Right? So we don't even have common men with a woman having a family in a society, and the man feels like he's the head of the house and he feels like he has a duty to defend that house. Even the people who, the common man and the common woman, when they are getting together, the man doesn't feel like he's the king of the house, so he doesn't feel like he has an obligation to protect it. And then there's a whole bunch of men, a large swath of the population, who don't get any girls at all. And girls are just on social media trying to chase the top 5% of men who are only interested in protecting their profits and nothing else, who are globalist anyway because they fly all around the world. And we look at Western society as a whole. I was talking to this girl and she's like, yeah, but men don't stick up for us. I'm like, the man you need to stick up for you is the exact kind of man you ignore. You don't even reply to his messages. You want the guy over there in Mykonos who has no interest in anything but yacht fuel pricing. So like society is actually so truly broken that they've managed to just infiltrate it from every single level because the nucleus of the cell is damaged. And LGBT is another huge part of that, right? They are so desperate to prevent the idea of a man loving a woman having kids and the man being the head of the house and the man being prepared to protect that house from all ideals. That's what they're scared of the most.
Well, this gets into why I think that they attacked you. It actually wasn't my idea. So I have to give credit here to Dave Smith because he's wonderful. And I had him on for a couple of hours last week, and he introduced a fact to me, and I've like, oh my gosh, this is totally why they attacked Donald Trump. It's why they attacked you. He was actually referring to David Duke and how there was this full media left and right attempt when he was running for governor to take him down, and how somebody had written an article about how strange it was because they tried to say it was because he was in the KKK, but obviously people that were in the KKK just went on and became the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Like nobody cared about that.
Yeah.
And actually what it was that he unexpectedly galvanized the populist right. And he said it's the only thing that the establishment is actually really fearful of is people that for whatever reason are able to galvanize real men. He's like, the populist left, nobody cares. Like, the blue hair, tattoos, skateboarders. But the populist right are people who know how to shoot, who know how to hunt, and who will go to war for their families. Yeah. So any person that unexpectedly galvanizes men that like embody true natural masculinity is going to be attacked by the matrix. I never understood why you were so, it made no sense to me. It's like, I met you with George years ago, and then suddenly I looked up and every single person was doing like an Andrew Tate is this video. And then I realized, oh, okay, after Dave Smith put that piece together for me, I'm like, he unexpectedly galvanized what would be the populist right. You're talking about men returning to masculinity. It doesn't matter what they say. You can be great, all of this stuff. That cannot happen when they're trying to turn everyone into a homosexual because it's easier to subjugate homosexuals because, homosexual men aren't going to be an army of people that go and try to like grab their guns and take on the government.
Well, they're used to bending over.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's what, and that's what the government wants you to do, right? They're used to bending over. In fact, they quite like it, which is exactly what the government wants you to do. And no, I think you're right. I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to reach such a large subsect of the population, and I was making it clear that masculinity on some level is saying no. Mm-hmm. That's what being a man is. Being a man is saying no. Even if you look at raising a child, right? It's the father who's typically the disciplinarian saying no. And they've tried to label that as hateful. They try and label you as hateful when you have standards. But truthfully, you love things, right? If you love your family, you hate everything that's against your family. There's no light without dark. So they'll just say you're hateful because you're anti-LGBT and you're anti-whatever. But truthfully, you love something else. And they try and miss that part out. And I managed to be massively successful, primarily also with young males, which they really got upset about because it was a perfect storm that ended up putting me in jail. But I had all these young males following me, and then I had my program that allowed them to make money, and they started making more money than their teachers, and they're going to school saying, I don't need you anymore, and blah, blah, blah. Then they were holding me accountable for absolutely everything anyone ever said. The number of articles that have been printed about me where they say some guy has done some heinous crime, and he followed Andrew Tate on Twitter. 9.8 million people follow me on Twitter, right? It's completely insane they try and tie these things to me. I have a strong suspicion Keir Starmer is going to come at me. I'll say it here first. He's going to try and say I incited the riots for saying you should have a border. But that's what I think they're going to try and do. Everything is automatically my fault. The Matrix is just out to get me. There are people in rooms in 3 or 4 different countries who are just sitting there trying to find a way to put me in jail. It's kind of scary. But yeah, I guess there's no light without dark. You can't you can't shine bright without casting a shadow. And my basic message has always been, the true essence of masculinity, which is saying no and not being afraid to be that person in the room who disagrees with the 17 people. That's what it's truthfully about, and that's what they're scared of. And they want you to instead bend over. And I don't think many people at home actually understand how, you say you've been around. COVID was a perfect example, but there's a lot of examples of it. But when you've seen enough of life, you see how power corrupts people and how evil people can actually be. I think the large swath of the populace who are just slowly going along with all of this, they don't believe that people are inherently evil. They're like, oh, well, I'm not evil. And why would they do that? I heard that all the time. Why would they make us get an injection if it doesn't help us? Why would they? Why would they? I don't think they understand the true dark hearts that come from a man who just wants to satisfy his ego. There are people out there who just like to laugh. They like to laugh at you wearing a mask and injecting yourself with poison. They thought it was funny. And power absolutely corrupts. We're run by these people in the world now. They're born into these families, or they're so corrupted morally, but also financially. Money's not even real. We talk about a lot of things. People say, oh, it's all about the money. And I say that is such an optimistic view that you believe it's all about the money, because it's not about the money. It's about controlling people, and it's about destroying their spirits. It's about destroying their souls. These people print money. Why do they need money? They print it. They don't have to make it. They just press a button. If you think they're doing things for money, then you don't understand how deep the rabbit hole goes. They don't actually care about money, which is why they destroyed the whole economy in the first place. They don't care about money. What they care about is making you comply. For the same reason a loser becomes a police officer. They're bullies and they're cowards and they have no actual innate power and they're empty inside and they don't believe in anything. And they want you to comply. They want you to obey. They want to intimidate you so they feel like they're something. That's why weak people in charge are so dangerous, because we all see what they do once they're weak. I saw Keir Starmer's stupid face. Put me in jail. I saw his stupid face standing up there. Oh, we're going to arrest everyone, trying to act like a tough guy. I saw the weakness in his eyes. I know what kind of person he is. He's not a good person. And he's saying the people of the UK are not allowed a point of view anymore. You're not allowed to speak. Full Stasi. It's incredible. It's actually quite scary.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is there were a ton of studies done. The globalists, even at a certain point, and I am talking about the reason why Sigmund Freud, despite the fact that he was a pedophile and protected pedophiles, is still taught in the classroom, is because he is considered the father of psychology because he gave them this award, and he was actually a Kabbalist, and so he worshipped the Jewish Kabbalah, and the Zohar was his book, and so he basically trained. And they ran these programs to even see how they could create a psychopath, right? And how they figured out that they could create a psychopath was molestation was a component of this, like molest them from the time that they are a child. Yeah. And so I don't think people understand that if a man was raped when he was a child and then was exposed to all of these other elements and then becomes a world leader, he has an element of psychopathology that has been intentionally bred into him. And he will do things in a way that you will be shocked. People talked about how Emmanuel Macron during COVID, the French people were saying like they realized he was a psychopath. Like there was something he was getting, like there was a sadistic element in nurturing people in a way that, for example, if you had a woman with a family, this is why even saying like women should have families before you allow them to go climb a ladder, they are removing these aspects that are natural where you're going, oh, maybe I shouldn't torture these people and let these people die alone. Well, these leaders don't think that way. Like you have to confront the actual evil that we are facing. Like this is a cult of people and they are literally deriving pleasure from your pain.
Well, let's talk about let's use some historical context. We're in the country of Romania. So Dracula is based here in Transylvania. Dracula is based on Vlad the Impaler, which was a man who had a castle about 3 hours from here. And he was famous for impaling people. He put a spike up one hole and out the other, and he'd impale them and stick them out on the streets. And what he was doing is when he was fighting the Ottomans, every time he'd kill an Ottoman, he'd impale them. But the Ottoman army outnumbered his 6-7 to 1. So he decided to try and scare them. So he went into local villages of his own people and impaled them. And just stuck them on sticks and just put them all along the road. So when the Ottomans started marching, they'd march for hours seeing all these impaled people. He impaled people and chose impalement and got pleasure from impaling people because he was molested as a child. Because the Ottomans, when they got hold of him, sodomized him. So when he became the leader, he thought, I'll show you all a lesson. And he impaled everybody. That was his thing. Yeah. So that exactly what you just said. These people are morally corrupted. And if you sit there and think that these leaders have any interest at all in you, it's kind of interesting to me. People always say, the politicians are so stupid. And once again, that's a very optimistic view. They're not stupid. They know what they're doing. And you are confused and you think they're stupid because you think they work for you. You think, I hired the politician. The politician is my representative, and he's going to go there to represent my interests. And when he doesn't represent your interests, you think he's dumb. No, he works for someone else. He uses this whole "you can vote for me" democracy garbage to allow you to accept him sitting up there and doing the opposite of absolutely everything you've ever asked for. There's not a single politician doing anything any of their people have ever asked for, nearly ever in the West. They work for someone else. They work for shadow lobbies and hidden interests and big money and banks, and they work for a completely different team. They're doing the exact right votes. They're voting exactly how they're supposed to. They know they're doing their job fantastically. Your confusion is you believe they give a shit about you, and they never have, and they don't. And we could talk about all of this, like I said, philosophically, but it's very interesting because the world is cyclical and everything goes round in circles. You know, you have a king who's in charge of his empire, and after a while, the king's son he's still a good king, but he's not as good. And then the next king's son has just been too spoiled and everything becomes decadent and you don't want them to be king anymore. And there's a revolution and you fight for democracy, and then democracy comes and there's a fantastic democracy at the beginning and everybody cares. And 3 or 4 generations later, everyone's just robbing and stealing as much as they can and nobody cares about the population anymore. And now you have people inside of America who would very happily put Trump as king for the rest of his life and put his son in charge. And then you go back to royalty. It's like the world is cyclical and nothing lasts forever. And when I talk to Americans, especially, they don't have this concept that America can fall. They're like, oh, but what will happen to America? I'm like, it's going to fall. I'm like, what do you mean it's going to fall? Nothing lasts forever. If you lived in Rome and you had these beautiful colosseums and these marble arches and you're wearing your robe and you had all your slaves and you're eating grapes, you can't ever imagine it on fire. One day you woke up and you looked out at Rome and you were like, no way. This is the world. This is the civilized world. This is Rome. There's nowhere else. Still burnt down. That's what happens with decadence over time. And everyone talks about the fall of Rome and we compare it to the fall of the West. And there's a lot of similarities. The fact that the native men grew decadent. They didn't want to go to war. They didn't want to protect it anymore. They decided to open the gates to the barbarians instead to prevent them from setting everything on fire. They said, y'all, you can come be Roman. They came in, were dissatisfied with what they had. And before you know, there's an internal rebellion and everything burnt. And it's really interesting to watch America as it is now. And the answer to all of these things, it starts with masculinity at home. But I think the reason they actually fear Trump so heavily is not because he's going to make any large policy changes, because they still have their fingers on all of the strings. And even if he makes a change, they can change it right back. They're scared of the culture shift. They're scared of Trump winning because it's going to inspire men to be more masculine. And that's what they're actually afraid of. Right. They're afraid of a big man being a big man. They're afraid of him standing up and saying things. You know, they are furious